Hey, it's Curly, and today we're going to be doing a simple clan guide for Vanguard 0. Essentially, if you've ever wondered what a certain clan can do, what they're sort of capable of, what their playstyle is, but you don't really want to invest in, let's say, getting all the cards for it, or building a deck or anything like that, I'm going to help you out today and just go over every single clan that's available in Vanguard 0 as of right now, and just give you a sort of general synopsis of how they play. So there are actually several different clans in Vanguard 0 alone. In Vanguard as a whole, there's even more clans, so there's a possibility that I might have to make an update on this in the future, because we might actually have more clans to talk about. But for now, we'll talk about all the clans that we have in Vanguard 0, which are basically, I guess, the main set of clans. When you talk about clans, as you may or may not know, for Vanguard, in order to build a deck, you have to pick a specific clan, and you can only use cards from that clan in your deck. Right? You can compare it to sort of like Yu-Gi-Oh, where if, for example, you would only use cards from a specific archetype, not exactly, but it's more accurately like you could only use cards from a specific attribute, right? Or if it was something like Magic, where you would only do a deck of a certain color or something like that. That's kind of how Vanguard works. You can't mix match anything except for one or two cards that break that rule. Next up, we're going to go here into Dark Zone. There's quite a couple of clans here. We're somewhat almost done. We have a good amount of clans left, but some of them are kind of smaller. So this is Dark Irregulars here. So Dark Irregulars, they focus on using your soul. Most of Dark Zone, for the most part, has some sort of soul manipulation to an extent. Dark Irregulars focus on massive soul charging, just getting as many cards into your soul as possible, usually 10 or 15, and then using that to power up your Vanguard or your other units. Right now, they don't really do too much. You are going to get support very soon after this video comes out, in like maybe 2 months or so after this video. Whether or not that support is good, I don't know yet, but as of right now, they're not really anything to write home about. They were kind of threatening for a little bit, but then they got one of their main pieces nerfed, so they're not that great. In terms of aesthetic, they're more sort of like demon, sort of SMT kind of stuff, but like demons and like, I don't want to say like magicians, but like succubuses and, you know, stuff like that. Their main sort of units right now are Amon, which have several cards that need Amon in order to be played as your Vanguard, and they just focus on soul charging, right? Getting a bunch of cards into your soul, and then once you have a certain quota met, you can get, you know, certain abilities such as powering up all your units, powering up your Vanguard, hitting with a crit, stuff like that, removing your opponent's board, stuff like that, right? Other than that, they don't really have any other playstyles at the moment. They used to have this as their main piece, which is the Blade Wing Reggie, which was a crazy card, where if you had 15 or more cards in your soul, you actually got 15k power, so it hits as hard as a stride, and it got double critical, so it can actually hit for 3 critical. So what you would do is actually use this, get your opponent to 3 damage, and then choke them out of Limit Break, because everyone needed to have at least 4 damage to activate any of their effects, but this card didn't. So you can just do that, and then just keep breaking down their PGs, because that's the only way that they can block until you just hit them, and they just get hit with 3 criticals. But unfortunately, now that this is locked behind a Limit Break, it kind of killed it, because you have to give your opponent Limit Break, or they have to give you Limit Break, and if they don't want to, they don't have to, right? And since Limit Break is not really important, it's not really that threatening, and heal guards are a thing, but who knows, maybe it's something worth exploring now. It's just soul charging is kind of difficult. They are a super RNG based clan, because you're just randomly soul charging cards from the top of your deck relatively blindly at like rapid speeds, and they're not very consistent at all. They're definitely more aggressive. They're definitely not defensive. They're definitely one of the more aggressive types, but they're in a pretty rough spot right now. Next up, we're going to go into Spike Brothers here. So Spike Brothers, in terms of aesthetic, they're actually just American football players or rugby players, but they're also like demonic. So they're like demons, devils, and things that play American football. Essentially, that's just their aesthetic. And their playstyle sort of revolves around multi-attacking, but specifically like attacking with a unit and then tagging that unit out, putting that unit back in your deck to then call another unit into that spot so that they can attack again, and you just keep doing that, right? So they have a lot of really strong combos that they can do where they just keep calling out units, putting units back into the deck, calling out units, having really strong multi-attacking kill turns. In terms of boss units, they really only have pretty much the one main boss unit in the Dudley Emperor here, which it lets you counterblast 2, put a card in your hand, call out 2 from your empty rearguard circle. And you have a bunch of other units that just let you empty out your rearguard circles, either from them attacking with their effects or something with their break ride, which lets them do that as well. So that's in general what they focus on. They are kind of piece reliant, so that's kind of like their main weakness, is that they have to have a lot of specific pieces in hand. When this deck can go off, it is a threat always, but it cannot always go off as easily as it wants to, right? This is similar to Murakumo, or not Murakumo, but I guess kind of similar to Murakumo, but more like Nubatama Tachikaze, where it was an event clan. There's no way to grind out the materials for it right now. They don't have support yet, but they should actually be getting support next month from whenever I recorded this video, which is in April 2022. I think next month they'll actually get support. So if you really want to try out Spikes, you should probably wait till then. Next up, let's go to Pale Moon here. Pale Moon is one of my favorite clans. They mainly focus on, similar to Dark Irregulars, putting stuff into your soul, but not as much. Not soul charging as much, and then using those units in your soul in order to call them out during battle, before battle, whatever the case may be, right? So it's similar to how Angel Feather uses their damage zone as a second hand. You kind of use your soul as a resource as well, which is really amazing. They really only have 2 archetypes. This being the Harry archetype that was just recently released, which focuses on using the Machia keyword, which means basically you call out a card from your soul, and at the end of the battle you put that card back into your soul. So you basically can get into a situation where you have no cards on board, you can call out 5 cards, and at the end of the turn they all come back. So it's very interesting playstyle. Then before that, they had the Lukier build, which focuses on, or not so much Lukier, but Silver Thorns, I should say, which are sort of the supposedly better build. They unfortunately got nerfed, so in my opinion they're not as great as they could have been, and they could have been unnerfed, but enough of that. They sort of focus on selective soul charging, which is kind of what makes them so good. Rather than just blindly putting top 3 cards in your deck into your soul, you kind of like look at 3 of them and choose whichever ones you want put into your soul, so you can put in specific cards. The only downside is that you can only call out or do anything if you have Silver Thorn, so your entire deck basically has to be Silver Thorn. But they are a very solid deck that you can build. They do have some sort of weaknesses a couple of weaknesses aside from the fact that, Silver Thorns were nerfed, they don't really have a lot of other pieces to play with. They definitely have a lot of different cards, but they don't have as many as maybe some of the other clans. In addition to that, you really only have 2 choices of decks. It's just Silver Thorns or Harry, and that's it. Before, it was just only Silver Thorns and like random crap put together in one deck. But their biggest weakness is that they don't have any way to countercharge other than like their PGs and healing. So once you use up your counterblasting resources, you're kind of screwed until your opponent beats you in the face a couple of times. So it's just something that you gotta keep in mind of. But they are a very sort of swarming style deck, because they can call out a lot of units from their soul, especially during battle and attack, and sometimes even hit from very huge numbers. But they might not always have, for example, intercepts that they can leave on board, right? So they're, I don't want to say glass cannon, but they're definitely more offensive than defensive. Then the last of the Dark Zone's clans here is Gear Chronicle, which is actually the newest clan added to the game. So Gear Chronicle focuses on two things, or a couple of things. It focuses on using your G Zone, because it's the first clan of G, or it was first introduced in G, I should say. Focuses on using your D Zone, focuses on using your Chrono Jet, Vanguard, and putting a bunch of your opponent's cards to the bottom of their deck. Chrono Jet is also really the only sort of main deck that you can build. There's not really any other archetypes or anything like that. And then later on in the future, for example next month, they're going to have a build that actually focuses on time leaping, which is sort of having a specific grade on board, swapping it out for something else in your deck. For that turn, during that battle, whatever the case may be, and then at the end of the turn, bringing back the original unit, right? As I said, it's just focusing on Chrono Jet here. I guess I can forget to... For Pale Moon, their aesthetic is sort of like magicians and circus performers, right? That's sort of their aesthetic. For Gear Chronicle, it's more... I don't want to just say... It's like more steampunk based, right? For the most part, everything is sort of steampunky and like with gears and all that kind of stuff. That's really the only way that I have that I can describe it. And yeah, there's not really much that I can say about Gear Chronicle since they're a brand new clan. Next up, we're going into... I don't know how to say it, but the fish people, the water-based nations. So this is Gran Blue. Originally, this was voted number 1 absolute worst clans in Vanguard 0. Complete joke. the clan that you could never take seriously, because there was just no way that it would work. Nothing was good. It was just completely, for the most part, unplayable. Generalizing here. Now, they just very recently this month got support, and they are probably one of the best clans in all of existence in Vanguard 0. So Gran Blue, very simple really. Their aesthetic is just a bunch of pirates and undead zombies, right? And they focus on your drop zone, because they're pirate zombies. So your focus is on throwing cards from your deck into your drop, or from wherever, putting them into your drop zone, and then bringing them back. Basic zombie gameplay. They're very good in terms of being able to recur your cards, getting the certain pieces that you need into your drop zone, bringing them back, getting really good effects from them. Very, very solid clan. They have a little bit more sort of complexity to them, but unlike the other ones that I said were more complex, if you are a new beginner, I would say you can invest in this if possible. Use whatever resources you have available to get this. It is a very good clan right now, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be very good for a long time, right? They really only have the one build, which is the Night Rose build, which just focuses on using your D zone to get stuff into your graveyard or your drop zone, bringing them back, getting effects, profit, win the game, right? That is Gran Blue. Then next up we have Bermuda Triangle, which is aesthetically just big titted mermaids, really, and like, I guess like high school, or not high school girls, but like now they have some like school based ones. Where they're like in a school or whatever, but it's just in general just big titty mermaids, right? They're all mermaids. They all got 90% of them have fat titties. Moving on from that, they mainly focus on bringing your units from board back into your hand, and then sometimes calling them out again. Usually you bring them, right now their like biggest playstyle is bringing a unit from board to hand and then getting a copy or several copies of that card from your deck to hand, right? It is kind of one of the most annoying decks right now, and it's probably like the best deck right now in this specific build, the Numeal build, which just lets you recycle all of your defensive pieces super easily, which lets you basically never die until your opponent decides to stop playing or they die of old age, right? They also have a couple of other builds. There is the Loris build, which focuses a little bit more on this harmony keyword, which is whenever a unit is placed on the same column, they become in harmony. And then there's also the Mirror build, which is a very strange build, but it just sort of focuses on going to basically you have 5 damage. So both of you and your opponent have 5 damage, and then just going buck wild with this massive 1-turn kill combo. But in general, for the most part, they all focus on just returning cards to hand, getting an advantage that way. Not really much else to say about it. I guess if you want, you can invest into it. Like I said, it is one of the best clans. It is like top 2, maybe, right? No one is telling you that. No one can ever tell you that this is not one of the best decks right now. That doesn't mean it might not get hit in the future, but it might be a little bit difficult for some people to get this right now. There are 2 different characters you can use to craft it, so there's that. Then the final water-based clan we have here is Aqua Force. So Aqua Force, in terms of aesthetic, they have this sort of like naval commander sort of thing. So it's a bunch of like, you know, Navy SEALs, or maybe not Navy SEALs, but a bunch of naval commanders on ships and stuff. And then a bunch of like ship-based dragons. So dragons that are like parts of ships or whatnot, stuff like that. In terms of playstyle, they actually focus on multi-attacking. So they're a very technical clan in that they focus on the order that your attacks are made. So they have a lot of different effects that go off depending on the number of attacks that you made, and also in what order certain attacks were made, right? So it's a very sort of strategic clan, which is pretty cool. Right now, their main deck is for Thavas, which focuses on just getting multiple different attacks and getting effects off depending on how many attacks you've done in that sort of turn, in that battle phase. And if, for example, you attack with a certain unit, if it's the 4th attack of that turn, etc., etc., you can get a lot of advantage that way. They can also sometimes even get like 9 attacks in one turn, so they're a very, very powerful clan. This is also another one of the clans that is extremely good right now. Basically, all the water-based clans are extremely good right now, so if you can invest in them and you can get them, please play them. You would not be disappointed in terms of how much you win. Other than that, their only other real main playstyle focuses on Maelstrom, Blue Storm Maelstrom, which is sort of about the same thing, but they have a new keyword in wave. So that just sort of means which attack their effect activates in. So you have to make sure that you're attacking for the 2nd attack on that turn, and that's when the effect goes off. It's very similar to the other one, but it's a lot more, I think, technical and sort of strategic. That is not what I meant to do. So let's go ahead and jump right back in really quickly. I'm pretty sure we're going to be breaking this up into 2 videos if I haven't already. But just, I didn't want to upload like a 2-hour long video. Like, I know if you put the 2 videos together, it might not seem that long, but it definitely will be that long. I might even do this into 5 videos. That might have been something I should have done if I was smarter, but it's fine. Alright, so then next up, let's go here to Megacolony. This is one of those clans where Wizard Event Clan doesn't really get support yet. We'll get support in the future. Right now, do not try and get it. There's no way to craft it, right? This focuses on a very specific mechanic of paralyzing your opponent's rear guards. So rather than retiring them or locking them, you do something similar to lock, where you just don't let them stand or move, right? So that means once your opponent's turn starts, all their rear guard stands, but if they're paralyzed, they actually don't stand. So they just kind of sit there. Your opponent has to basically overcall them in order to make use of that circle again, right? So it's a lot less sort of restrictive than lock, right? Because you still technically have access to that circle. But they also have a way easier way of getting rid of your opponent's Vanguard, which is they could just make it so that they don't stand, so they just kind of like sit there, and you have to force your opponent to re-ride their Vanguard, which for certain decks can hurt them a lot because they need a very specific Vanguard, and the newer G clans or G decks only have 4 copies of this one Vanguard, so once they run out of them, they really can't do too much. So this has become a very interesting deck lately. I did a video on this actually as well. They only really have the one main playstyle, which is sort of the machining build right now. They didn't really receive a lot of support before, but it's just a machining build which sort of, like as I mentioned, focuses on paralyzing your opponent's Vanguard. You do have to meet a lot of specific conditions, and it is very cost heavy, and there's really no way to get this cost back, so you have to be very, very strategic with when you do what you do, right? Your opponent can try and play around it. You do have ways that you can get around that yourself, but it's a very interesting control clan that can give some decks a lot of trouble. Some decks don't really care. Next up, we have Great Nature, which right now is having an event in order to get these cards, the newer cards. Unfortunately, they're not that great. I've actually been messing around with them a lot. Some of the supporting cards are very good. The main boss units, not so much. But in general, in terms of aesthetic, I should have mentioned, you probably already noticed, but Megacolony is all bugs. It's just bugs and like armor, right? And then some ladies. You got some ladybugs. But then for Great Nature, it's just like animals that are like smart. Was kind of like their main gimmick. So you have stuff like Guardian of Truth, Instructor Bison, stuff like that, and like cute little animals that like do homework and stuff like that. It's a very cute little clan. In general, what their main game plan sort of focuses on is two things. They focus on restanding your rear guards, or I guess three things. Giving them power, specifically 4K power, and then retiring them at the end of your turn. So you don't retire them right away, but at the end of the turn, they will be retired. And usually when they get retired, they maybe get an additional effect. Sometimes they can even just come right back, or sometimes you can draw a card because you retired. And it's a very interesting clan because there's times where you can stack all those effects on one card, retire that one card, and draw like 5 cards because one card got retired, right? So their main sort of boss units right now is the famous Professor Big Belly. He doesn't really do too much. He kind of just focuses on hitting a certain threshold for your units and just drawing cards. Not the best. What is a lot more viable is actually the very first sort of deck in the Leopold here, who has a couple of other cards which just on attack give another unit 4,000 and at the end of the turn retire it, so you can very easily spam out these effects and then just hit one really big attack because you just keep spamming this effect. Since the unit doesn't get retired to the end of the turn, you can just keep throwing all of your retire effects on one card and powering it up, then it can get retired. I'm gonna have a video on this specific build in the future. Great Nature is not great. They don't really have anything like in terms of their playstyle. Like they have a pretty basic playstyle. You power up your units, restand them, and at the end of the turn retire them, but they just don't do enough compared to what other decks can do. So their like power ceiling is very low, but they're a nice, honest little deck. Since it's an event clan and we do have 2 different ways to craft for it, if you want to play it, go ahead. A lot of the things you need I don't believe are very expensive. The only real unfortunate part is this, which is a triple rare, so you can't craft it. This is one of their best strides right now, but it's locked to a specific Vanguard. And then finally, we have Nectar here, which is a clan that didn't really receive a lot of support initially. It was an event clan and it was kind of okay, but now it has plot armor because it is a main character clan. Nectar, for the most part, it focuses on swarming the field and then having units that have the same name on the field. So similar to like a Murakumo, where you just need units with the same name. And if you do, you can, get off certain effects. Usually they just get a lot of power, so they get really big depending on having a full board. So obviously they have a lot of disadvantages against a lot of control decks that can just retire them or bind their units, but they do get ways to handle that in the near future. Their main 2 decks are the Asha here, which lets you call a card from your deck that has the same name, and a lot of their The G Zone lets you, do the same thing and power up all your units if you have cards with the same name on them, so you can get these massive columns. In addition, on your opponent's turn, so you can kind of just waste one of your opponent's turns because you'll have all of these huge intercepts that they just cannot get through. And then the other build is the sort of Musketeer build, which specifically focuses on retiring your own Musketeers in order to get other Musketeers from your deck. Likewise, putting them back into your deck, right? So you just recycle them. So you retire one to call one, and then you bring that one back, and then keep going. And you're also getting crits and powering up your Vanguard that way. It's a little bit interesting. Originally, people were using Musketeers with the newer Asha stuff, but now they're finding out the Asha stuff is actually not that bad. And then that's finally it. Those are all the clans in Vanguard 0. These are not actually clans. These are sort of like what I was talking about before, where there's like the like grouping of clans, and there's like specific specific cards that were released that you can use in any of those cards within that grouping. But yeah, as I've mentioned in a couple of other videos, if you're new to Vanguard, try out Royal Paladins. If you can, Shadow Paladin, Kagro, and Gear Chronicle. I think those are some really good clans for you to get started with. They are somewhat balanced in what they can do. They can kind of do a little bit of everything. Some of them a lot more control focused. They can definitely get you started. They also have a lot of support, and they will be supported a lot in the future. Sorry for banging my mic. And I think that'll do it for this video. Let me know in the comments below what you thought of my super vast generalizations. Let me know if this helped you. I hope it did. I just wanted to make sure you have a good understanding of what deck you may want to try out, because it's kind of difficult to do that right now, and you kind of just have to invest a bunch of resources, and you might not even like any of those clans. So now you have a sort of general idea, and I hope the example deck helps a lot as well. But in any case, till next time, take care of yourself.